All right, everybody. Mike Kasmer here with Pinkbike, and I'm sitting here at Crankworks 2018 with Leo Kokkonen. He's the head of Pole Bicycles. He's here with his latest creation, the Machine, and we're just going to kind of get a little background of what it took to get this bike into existence, and even start with where Leo came from and his background. So Leo, not everybody knows you. They've probably seen Pole bikes, but how did Pole get its start? How'd that become a company?
Well, I was riding downhill mainly. I started off pretty late of my age riding downhill. I was more or less like just mountain biker. I didn't see it as a hobby. But after a few years of riding downhill, I wanted to go to trail bikes, and the trail bikes felt pretty awful after downhill bike. They couldn't go good in downhill, and also I felt that you could improve the uphill capabilities as well. And I didn't feel safe with the bikes as well, and there was some issues with the mechanics and stuff like that. And I'm an industrial designer. I had my own industrial design company, so I think it would be a cool task for me to go forward and do something I love and give options for people.
Cool. And so, as an industrial designer, were you the engineer behind the bikes too? Did you kind of figure out how to do engineer as well as industrial design work on the bikes, or did you have to hire someone to get those first bikes going?
Basically, I'm doing all the design work, engineering wise as well. So as an entrepreneur, I needed to do a lot of stuff by myself, and most of the engineers weren't that good at 3D modeling. So I kind of adapted engineering skills. Meanwhile, I was running the industrial design company. So kind of a self-led engineer. On bikes, it was like on bikes you need to know pretty much everything from different manufacturing methods and also how to make the frame last long. Like engineering wise, it's a pretty hard task actually.
Yeah, so kind of on that topic, that kind of brings us to the Machine, which you kind of took the hardest way possible to make an aluminum bike, it seems like. So for those who aren't familiar, the Machine, it's CNC'd, two different halves are CNC'd out of a single piece of aluminum and then joined together, where compared to most bikes, which are tubes welded together. So that's really different than anything that's out there. What made you go that route and over just a normal welded tube design?
Well, I was designing a carbon fiber bike, and then I kind of got fed up of how things are done in that industry, and then I first canceled the project, and I started to think how else could we do the bike, and I was thinking about machining the joints like lugs, and then bond tubes to that, and then there was a CNC factory guy who just had a joke that why don't we CNC machine the whole thing, and I was like, we could try to do that as well.
During the manufacturing process, does that limit how many you could possibly make? Like, you guys aren't trying to obviously compete with the bigger companies there, but because each frame, I'm assuming, takes a pretty long time to create, are you limited by how many you can make each year, just machine capacity, that type of thing?
Not really, because we can buy new machines, or it's not limited. So it's more or less like when we will take those so-called risks to get a new machine going on. But like we have several already, so it's not like we need to double our capacity or something like that. At the moment, we're a little bit behind on deliveries on customers, so the inquiries are pretty big on this, and we're growing pretty fast. So we're this year probably tripled our turnover. So we're growing pretty fast, and like it's not that like you would think that the CNCing is really hard, but when you get into it, you can. We can't say mass production, but we are targeting a different level of innovation, and probably we're creating another layer on top of the high-end bikes.
So I guess with a completed bike, as far as I guess the benefits of this versus just a normal welded up frame, like what would be the benefit? Why would somebody want to pick a CNC machine bike? Obviously, I think yours is the only one, but why would they choose that over one that's made with a normal, traditional welded tube route?
Well, it's totally different level of materials for one reason, and of course it's a really unique bike, and we can like there's tons of small innovations inside the frame I did, and when you ride the welded frame, which is the Evolinks are pretty similar concept of kinematics, but you can still feel this bike different. So talking about just numbers on bike, it doesn't create the bike. There's a lot of like the frame construction itself makes a lot of the bike. So we noticed that this bike, for example, turns better than the Evolinks, and actually I don't know why. It goes around corners differently. It's more poppy, but we're trying to figure out why is it like that. And then by changing the frame, we kind of start learning from it. So we can create different kind of wall thicknesses inside the frame or different constructions, and there's a lot of things that we can play around. For consumer, it's who's gonna buy one? It's a totally unique bike.
Yeah, it definitely stands out. It has a price tag to match, but somebody that's looking for something different, this will probably be on their list. I guess another thing kind of brings us to what makes your bike stand out is the geometry. Pole is one of the brands that kind of early adopters of the long trend, long front center, fairly slack head angles. And this is no exception. I think is it 63.9 head angle, something like that, with a pretty long chain stays as well. 455, am I right? Yeah. Where do you see the next step of that? It seems like at a certain point, bikes will be too long, too slack. Is there a limit? Or do you see a limit yet, or do you think you've achieved numbers that are kind of where it's going to stay for a bit?
Well, I think we could go slacker and longer, but I don't think it's we're trying to find a bike that suits all the riding conditions. Really tight switchbacks and fast stuff like that you can find here in Whistler, for example. I've tried to find here what's different from, for example, the Alps or like England or Wales, but if you go too long, people might feel a little bit like that it's not for them. But I don't think this is like the extreme what we could do, and it's still rideable. I have ridden our extra large, which is basically reaches 535 millimeters, and I'm 179 centimeters tall, so I can ride that through a lot of things, and I just don't feel that that's kind of too much.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, because every year each company goes a little more, but you guys are definitely at the pushing that limit at that end.
Yeah,
so.
we're kind of settled here where we are at the moment. I feel that on this bike, for example, I could have a slacker head angle for some tracks, but then on some tracks it's just here how it is, and probably I'll create some cups that we can change on the bike and change the geometry a little bit.
I guess what's next after the machine? You've got the machine, you've got the we've seen it set up basically as a downhill bike. Are we going to see shorter travel using the same construction techniques, or is this going to kind of be its own project for a while?
Yeah, I'm creating at the moment the shorter travel bike. I'm trying to create a different bike. So many companies have like 3 bikes. They have a really short travel, like a cross-country bike, then they have a trail bike, then they have an enduro bike, maybe they have even the super enduro bike, and then the downhill bike. So what I think that in between this bike and cross-country bike, there is no room for a bike like this. I think if we create a bike that can reach both directions from trail a little bit to all mountain and a little bit to the cross-country, and that would be really spot on. And I think it could have more travel than a normal bike that segment has.
So typically we think of a trail bike 130, 140. You're thinking more like 160, 170 would be your normal everyday trail bike kind of thing?
I would say 140, 150, something.
Okay. So those of you who aren't familiar with the machine, it has 160 millimeters of travel in the rear, 180 up front. It's a 29er. Definitely falls in that really long, low, and flat category. And one feature that we mention a lot, which might seem silly, but it's important, this bike holds 3 water bottles. So that's pretty much 2 more than any bike that we typically see these days. It's a nice feature. we always get teased because when new bikes come out, we kind of always are hard on them if they don't hold water bottles because none of us like wearing packs anymore. And so it's nice to see bikes hold water bottles. This one holds 3. So what was the thinking behind that?
Well, we have mounts for, like you see here, I have a like the one-up pump that can hold stuff inside as well, and a bottle underneath it, the second mount. And I think that, for example, Lee Johnson, who's racing the EWS, he can hold one liter bottle there. So it gives people options. So when we turn the shock 90 degrees, we have more room. So why not?
Yeah, makes sense. I guess another question that comes up, just overall, what's been the biggest challenge about getting this to market? What was the number one hurdle that, was kind of where you didn't know if it happened, or just what was the most challenging part of this whole process?
Do you mean machine or?
Just overall, kind of getting this from your initial idea in your head, getting it out to the market. What was the hardest part that was the most frustrating, I guess?
Not knowing, does it work or not? Like experimenting this kind of stuff. It's a huge invest of money for one part, and second is that because nobody's done it before, and we need to go through all the testing procedures that we are sure that nobody will hurt themselves if we are wrong. So that's the biggest challenge, but surprisingly, this is really safe bike to ride. Even though we tested it without the glue, only with the bolts, the 7075 aluminum is really tough. But I can show you off the record some videos that we've done with it, but it's totally mind-blowing how much you can bend it and it goes back.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so that's another thing. This bike uses 7075 aluminum, where most bikes use 6061, or it's usually 6061 is typical, right? Different aluminum that's not easily welded, if ever. So that's why this bike is actually glued together and then bolted together just for extra security. So definitely a different construction than anything currently on the market. Yeah, so this bike uses 7075, not something you usually see on a frame. Where did that come from, and what are the challenges with that one?
Yeah, 7075, it's not stiffer than any other aluminum. It's pretty much the same, but it's 80% stronger. So basically, airplanes have wings, and they usually bend quite a lot, and they need to do it many times. So the fatigue life is a lot greater than like a 606 Fun, for example.
So I mean, we've kind of earlier in this year, there was definitely a little debate about carbon and aluminum, all that. So we've kind of covered that. If people want, they can check out this article on Pinkbike. We've kind of hopefully covered both sides, the carbon versus aluminum. But now that brings us to this bike. When you CNC it, all that waste that comes from, because you're using a pretty big block of aluminum to start, you cut it out, and then what do you do with the excess aluminum from that?
Same as this one. We just recycle it. Aluminum, metal recycles forever. So basically, all the cutting waste or whatever we create, it's so what happens to this? It gets crushed, then it goes to smelt, and then it's gonna go recycle again. Of course, that needs energy, and it depends where you are on the planet. Like, I mean, what country you're from. But modern countries where these bikes usually are purchased from, they have recycling centers for it, and it's really easy to recycle. Of course, we machine from billets. We have like you see the center part of it. When we cut it out, we make other products out of it. So all the material, for example, for us, it's only reasonable to use it. It's pretty expensive material.
Yeah, and then I guess also worth mentioning, this bike is made in Finland in a Finnish factory, correct? Like it's your own factory. Yeah, so they've got the machines. Definitely, they've taken this, and it's interesting to see a company kind of take everything in-house, where we're used to seeing companies go overseas. Definitely an interesting project, and interesting to see it come out on the market now. And I guess that's another thing. These are available now. There's some delays in production, right? Was that just getting the machines up and running, or what happened? Because people wanted them, obviously, right as soon as they saw a picture, but they had to wait a little bit.
Yeah, well, for example, your test bike where we were talking about, it's like we don't want to deliver that before we deliver it to our customers. Our machines got delayed. At the same time, our welding company who were producing our Evolinks went bankrupt, and then we needed to find a new factory. So we had 2 factory searches going on at the same time. So that was pretty hard for us to conquer. We had a long days going on, and and building our factory, and one of the machines came and it didn't work. So kind of also like we need to go bigger and bigger really fast, and there was a lot of like we did the whole project from zero to like I didn't have any drawings of this bike whatsoever 2017 April. So from that to full running production,
That's a quick turnaround there.
yeah. So you know what I mean. It's we did quite impossible.
Cool. Well, congratulations on getting this out, and appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, and enjoy the rest of your time in Whistler. All right, well, that wraps up our chat with Leo. So if you want to subscribe, click here, and check out more videos, just click down here.